Hey, what's up? I am Mike Squires, and this is the Couch Riffs Podcast, episode number 112, featuring my guest, Jeff Schroeder of Smashing Pumpkins. Smashing Pumpkins. Come on. You got to be kidding me. This is, strangely, this is a band that I have not seen live before. And for whatever reason, in the 90s, like I knew the singles and, I knew the songs that everyone heard, but I never did a dive down into the records. And these records are amazing, like really amazing. And, sonically pretty exciting. And yeah, anyway, Jeff has been in the band for like 13 or 14 years. Touring and recording in the band. They have a new record coming out in November. Bunch of singles and videos coming out between now and then. Jeff is he cut his teeth on like early in the 80s he was into shred, then he got into the shoegaze, shred gaze. Let's call him a shred gaze guitar player. That's pretty cool. We just made that up, Jeff. Congratulations, you created a new sub-genre. You created a new sub-genre. That's right. You use a 007 string guitar. God, I'm so stupid. I'm sorry. We had a great time talking. We really, really good time talking. And we have a video coming up where... yeah, you'll see. It's half of another well-known band as well, doing some classic metal from the 80s. So yeah, thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. Hey, if you like the podcast, if you're enjoying listening to the podcast, please share episodes. Click the little thumb thing on my posts. Click it on the actual episode, over there in Apple, like rate and review if you can. Just like click on the 5 stars. It's pretty simple. It's easy. Doesn't take any time. And it really helps. It helps keep me in the algorithm, and keeping me up there in the charts and in the algorithm helps me continue to get great guests and have great conversations. And I've got some, I've always got a bunch of, ladles in the soup pot, so to speak, trying to get out the good bits. And so there's a lot of great stuff coming up. And that's because, you guys have been listening and supporting in all the right and great ways. And so thank you very much. I appreciate it. You could also go over to couchriffs.com, and there's a link to the Etsy store, buy a t-shirt or trucker hat. You could become a monthly pledge supporter. And you could do that for as little as 99 cents a month. It's at anchor.fm. Search for Couch Riffs, or anchor.fm/couch-riffs. All my social medias have a link to all that stuff. So I'm going to thank folks who have been supporting with pledge donations every month right now. So hang tight. Listen up. Thank you, Ryan Waters. Thank you, Hayden Smith. Thank you, Ryan Hooper. Excuse me. Thank you, Matt Gabbs. Thank you, Justin Jones. Thank you, Doug Starkovic. Thank you, Deja Colantuono. Thank you, Rochelle Parker. Thank you, Chris Smith. Thank you, Adam Pranica. Thank you, Dan Hurst. Thank you, James Pope. Thank you, S.J. Somerset Sullivan. Thank you, Mike Lacerda. Thank you, Jamie McParland. Thank you, Dan Leary. Thank you, Kathy Giordano. Thank you, Rebecca Pellman. Thank you, Danny Bland. Thank you, Soto Rebellos. Thank you, Ryan Crace. Thank you, Paul Hutzler. Thank you, Justice Gash. Thank you, Steve Hall. Thank you, Teresa Morgan. Thank you, Rolla Amplifiers. Go check out the Bob Balch 100-watt tube shredder. Thank you, Perry Morgan. And last but not least, thank you to my dear, sweet, electric blanket type warm friends over at rivercityguitars.com. River City Guitars is a sweet little guitar store in Spokane, Washington. And, I don't know, man. I don't know how Bobby does it, but he is in Spokane, which is, not exactly a metropolitan area, but it's a city. It's a city. And he's just got a very cool selection of guitars. You know why? It's because he's out hustling and working hard. And that's what it takes. You got to work hard, man, to do anything, to get anywhere. And and that's what Bobby does. And he's a sweet guy, and people want to do business with him because he's great. So go check him out, rivercityguitars.com. If you've got stuff for sale, like something you want to part with, guitars, vintage guitars, used guitars, cool guitars, could be a newer thing, just really cool. Give him a call, 509-818-7693 or sales.rivercityguitars@gmail.com. Now, every week, I go to their website and I pick a guitar, which I think is very cool. And this week, I pick a 1976, yes, that's right, an American bicentennial celebration, Gibson Les Paul Custom. This, like all amazing Les Paul Customs, is black with gold hardware. It is a stunner. Now, this thing is 45 years old, you understand. So, like any of us up in that area of years, it's got some checks. And these things, it's not like this thing went in and got its whole body tattooed one week. This thing earned these battle scars. And I think from before, I think this thing weighs like 10 pounds. It's like an ounce under 10 pounds. Once you got the strap on it, 10 pounds. This thing's, it's a tank. But these things sound great. And you're not going to find a cooler looking guitar. That's a fact. You can score this one over there for $37.99 or make them an offer. No harm in that, right? All they can say is, what about this? Or, no, sorry, we don't accept, we don't accept that kind of trade. So, I don't even know what that meant. Again, I'm so stupid. No, I'm not. I'm brilliant. No, I'm somewhere in between. I certainly entertain myself. Listen, thank you for listening so much. Remember, let me just say a couple things. Go out and vote. Go vote. And if you really want things to be different, vote. Period. It really is that simple. The golden rule. Remember the golden rule, right? Treat people like you want to be treated, and perhaps we can get back to being civil, and maybe one day we can be in a place where everyone is treated equally and has equal opportunities in life. And until that happens, we fail. Hello.
Hey, let me see.
Oh yeah, we got audio. Everything's working. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you.
Every time. It is a miracle.
Well, yeah, I've been with Pumpkins. We've been doing Zoom meetings every other day, working on new music.
Oh,
Nice.
nice.
Like we share some files and then we all get on and basically have like a discussion kind of thing for anywhere between a half an hour and an hour. So we've gotten all the kinks worked out.
You see, you got some Yngwie back there.
I do.
Dude, I love it. Yeah. Hey, I was gonna ask you straight out of the gate. I went back to look. You told me about the thing you were working on, and I was like, I wonder if I can talk about that or not. And then I saw that you posted about it, but I didn't see it. I looked around for it.
Oh, the Michelangelo thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's out there. It's on his YouTube page.
Oh, okay. I'll go look for it.
Yeah. I can. Is there some way to send a link on here?
Oh, I can go there and look.
Yeah, if you just go to Michelangelo's Badio's YouTube
Yeah.
page, whatever. It's on there. It's got about, I know about, it's already at like 7 or 8 thousand views, so it's not bad.
Nice. Um, man, he's a very impressive player.
Yeah. He's I mean, amazing. I mean, it just really like from a technical standpoint, it's pretty remarkable what he's been able to do and how he's kind of developed these techniques to do these things really quickly. It's like he's like a machine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it seems that way.
But and but and I really like like the sound. It's like when I talked to him, because I ended up taking a handful of lessons from him, because I've been playing. I've been really into that kind of stuff my whole life, and but obviously that kind of picking is takes a lot of work and a lot of effort, and I'd kind of and I had I've taken lots of lessons and studied guitar formally in my life, but I never studied with anybody that was like that type of like full blown shredder. And so I had basically been learning from like Paul Gilbert DVDs and stuff like that, like the intense rock ones, which are great, what I mean? But I'd kind of hit
amazing, yeah.
a certain type of wall, like where I wasn't able to get past a certain BPM. And is it like, you start going, okay, is it something with my technique or something that's kind of stopping me at that place? So I just hit him up one day on Instagram, just whatever, just like, hey, do you give lessons at all? And he's like, yeah, I could give you a couple lessons. And so I was still living in Chicago at the time. And yeah, I went to his place, and and he just watched me play for a while. And he was like, no, he's like, you're fine. He's like, and then he gave me some little tips, like he's like, this is what I would suggest doing, and some left hand exercises to kind of for better finger control, and then some a few kind of things to practice with the picking and stuff. He's like, but you're holding the pick great. He's like, actually, your technique is great. So it's just you just kind of whatever, just gave me a few little, no, and there weren't nothing too crazy, but it's just, it's literally just, you got to kind of put in the
hours. Let me ask you this. When he said, all right, let me see you play, I mean, all of a sudden you're sitting in front of that guy and you're like, oh shit, now I'm playing guitar, just the two of us. What did you play? Did he hand you a piece of music or?
No. Like, I mean, we were just kind of jamming, I think. Like, we both were just sitting there with our guitars and plugged into amps, and, we just probably played some kind of bad E minor heavy metal, you know what I mean? And just, you know what I mean? And then he's like, okay. Or that, and then he just thought, he said, he's like, don't worry about messing up or anything. He's like, just play like as fast as you can. Like play the fastest, so you're just terrible, you know what I mean? Like, but just playing some of my licks. And he was like, okay, great. And he's like a great instructor. And he's a wonderful, super, super kind, gracious, nice human being, like really the nicest guy, really, really intelligent, really knows so much about music, very knowledgeable about music theory. And,
I would imagine.
Yeah, understands like what he's doing, on a harmonic level, but then understands the mechanics of how he plays too. And I mean, it's crazy because unlike me, and he's ultra ergonomic in his playing. Like there's no extra hand motion. It's like he's playing fast. It doesn't even look like he's moving his hand. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think that, I'm a few years older than you, and so I got my first guitar, and then like Paul Gilbert showed up. Like I got my first guitar, and I was like George Lynch, Warren DeMartini, Jake E. Lee, like that was the stuff, right?
And that was pretty much me too. I mean, Paul Gilbert came on the scene like a few years after I'd already been playing.
Yeah. But I realized I learned quickly when I got my guitar, because I played a lot, but I probably haven't gotten any better since 1991. I don't know. Um, but I realized very quickly that kind of technical playing was not probably in my future because I did not have the discipline to
Yeah.
really, enforce a classical, sort of approach, which it requires, right? I mean, you have to study, you have to work really hard.
Yeah.
Uh, every once in a while, I'll get a little taste of it,
Lost you.
Oh yeah, you know. Every once in a while, I'll get
Yeah.
a little taste of it, but that's just I'm that's not going to be. It's not me. I can't do
Well,
it.
it's fun. Yeah. For me, when I started playing guitar, like seriously I mean, I had a guitar and it sat in I picked it up, played it. One of my brother's friends came over who was a pretty decent player and showed me like bar chords. He's like, oh, if you want to play heavy metal songs, if you just know this one shape, you can play like 90% of songs. You just
Right,
need to,
just play
and
these
I was
on
like,
these three dots.
yeah. And I was like, whoa, like, okay, cool. And so that was like, okay, that was like a big, like, opening. Like, wow, okay, cool. But I didn't really, so it's that couple, guitar magazines trying to figure out. But then finally,
Yeah.
like I would say it was probably like 1987,
Oh yeah.
high point of that kind of guitar playing. I remember, I went into this music store where I grew up in Orange County, California, and I just saw my first teacher the other day, and I told him, I said, "Do you remember when I first met you?" He's like, "No, I said, I was in there, just a kid wearing like a Van Halen shirt or something, and so you come up to me, he's like, oh, you like Van Halen? I'm like, yeah, I like Van Halen. And so he pulls a guitar off the wall, plugs into an amp, and starts playing like Panama and Hot for Teacher and Eruption. And I'd never
Right.
seen anybody like up close play that stuff. You never seen like somebody like 2 feet in front of you doing all those techniques and go like, holy smokes,
There
I
was
can't
no
believe this.
YouTube then.
So then you go back home like, Mom, like I gotta take lessons from this guy, So I started taking lessons, and then, but he was a really great teacher because he was into like Van Halen. He was definitely into Van Halen and stuff, but he didn't really. And he was a young guy because he was only 26 at the time. He seemed so old to me because I was only like 12 or 13. But I was like, he was more into like Uli John Roth, Scorpions, and then he got me into things like. But then he was really into like Jeff Beck and the Yardbirds and Mott the Hoople, and so he kind of steered me. He's like, "We'll learn some heavy metal, but he's like, I really think you should learn these other things too.
These things that helped carve out what heavy metal would be."
And he was into at the time, which would have also was beginning to play more of what would have been an alternative style guitar playing as well. And so as I got older and he got older, we as music changed, I kind of got out of heavy metal for a while as the 80s started coming to an end. And I like you, I kind of, abandoned like working that hard to play and kind of got interested in other things because the world was changing, music was changing. You start playing in bands, and once kind of the early 90s came, I didn't really listen to heavy metal much. Especially, any new heavy metal by like the early 90s. But
was there any 90s era metal that you listened to?
I've gone back and,
Right.
it's funny, like now over time, like I've gone back and like picked up like what did Yngwie put out in the 90s or what did Satriani put out in the 90s?
Right.
Because I was super into that stuff. And then, kind of post Nirvana and all that, I have to admit, I jumped ship. You know what I mean? I didn't go pick up the new Yngwie album in 1993. And so I've kind of gone back and listened to that stuff. And there's he put out some really great records like Seventh Sign. And there's some cool, like, wow, this is really good. I mean, obviously a lot of those bands got really confused because they were like, okay, we got to like we're still heavy metal, but we kind of got to be grunge. And,
and now we're just in Europe and Japan a lot.
yeah. But, yeah, but that was great because, kind of going into the 90s, it became more about, I never got into like the punk grunge thing. I was definitely more into like the British shoegaze type of bands, My Bloody Valentine and Ride and Swerve Driver and
I love
Slow Dive.
Swerve Driver.
Yeah, there was this band actually from LA called Medicine, which I was still a massive fan of, and obviously Smashing Pumpkins. So Dinosaur Jr. I kind of liked that stuff with a little Sonic Youth, things with a little more of a adventurous like guitar tones and stuff. So it really became about exploring that kind of space.
Well, everyone in all the guitar players in those bands, including Smashing Pumpkins, can really play. Like, it's not, there's songs like I love Nirvana and the songs are great, but Kurt, not a great guitar player. He could
not in that kind of sense.
Yeah, right.
Good enough to play what he needed to play.
Communicate a song and emote and very creative that way, but like doesn't hold a candle to dude from what was the band we were just talking about? The Mescal Head.
Swerve Driver.
Swerve Driver. I mean,
yeah.
I like Swerve Driver more than I like Radiohead.
Sure, yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, man. That's a weird thing happened in the 90s. I got away from the metal mostly. I got into because I was always trying to push the boundary and find, I finally moved to a city from the country and I had this hick complex. So I was definitely trying to give myself a musical education. So I was listening to a lot of jazz and soundtrack music and some death metal, like technical death metal, and just trying to trying to make it happen. And I started playing bass, and that actually helped my guitar playing a lot. And also, it was always cool to be a really good bass player. Nobody wants a shitty bass player.
No, and actually having that's for any band, like actually having a great bass player is like the total secret weapon. Even if you're a simple band, if you have a smoking bass player with a great pocket and can kind of inject energy on that side of things, it's like you can be like a 6 and go to like a 9. You know what I mean?
But if your drummer sucks, you're back to 2.
That's what I like. One of the first bands I was in, I was 5 or 6 years, maybe even 7 years younger than everybody else. I was just 18. My guitar teacher's roommate, was in a band. And by that time, my teacher, I was just taking lessons at his house because, and so we were in his room one day playing, and then I left, and then his roommate was like, "Hey, who are you playing guitar with today?" And my teacher was like, "Oh, it's one of my students, Jeff." He's like, our band, we're looking for a new guitar player. Can I get can you hook us up? So I got in this band, and they were much more advanced than me. I'd been in literally high school garage bands playing Cinderella songs and Warrant songs in the garage. You know what I mean? Like Guns N' Roses and stuff like that. So then to go and be in a real band and playing all the Hollywood clubs, but I remember Michael, the singer of the band, he played guitar too. He goes, "If you don't have a great drummer, you'll never be a great band."
That's
you can be average. He's like, you can be an average guitar player and be in a great band. He's like, but if you want to really be a great band, you have to have a good, because we had a really good drummer. He was really good, but we're having some problems with him, and it was kind of like, we got to keep him in the band because we don't want to kick down, and
there are thousands of examples of average guitar players in great bands, and not many examples of, average or less than average drummers in great bands.
And, and especially now, for the last, 14 years or so, I've been playing with Jimmy Chamberlin and the Smashing Pumpkins, and it's just,
oh yeah,
it's, like I really haven't. I mean, it's really hard for me to play with other, like when I go and play, sometimes sit in with another band or something, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what it's like to not play with like one of the world's greatest drummers, one of
Right.
the greatest drummers of all time. You forget like how, I mean, it's total game changer. We're never worried about being smoked by other bands because we just have one of the best drummers in the world that can just light it up at will. You
Well,
know
also,
what I
and
mean?
and over 30 years of incredible music to deliver. Oh,
Yeah,
did you
yeah,
lose me?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
A lot of
I lose. Yeah, yeah,
killer
you kind of,
music.
but you're back. You're
Um
yeah.
so that first band that you played in when you were playing the clubs, to get some perspective, what year was that?
That would have been 1992.
So in 1992, the climate in LA must have been very confusing. I mean,
Um, Let me put it to you this way. I started high school in 1988,
yeah.
and being from LA, um, you know, in the LA area, Guns N' Roses was essentially a local band. And so that album, Appetite for Destruction, came out in 87, my last year of junior high. And it was like, there was a hard rock station, very famous hard rock heavy metal station out here, 105.5 KNAC.
Hmm.
And they played, that album from, they played Guns N' Roses as when they had demo tapes too. Like when that album came out, they really, really supported the band. So we already knew Guns N' Roses in LA. But then that summer of '88, when I graduated junior high, started high school, it was that's when Sweet Child of Mine exploded on the radio. And so I remember my first day of freshman year of high school. You were like, okay, I'm in high school now. It's like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. You're walking around. You're like, wow, what is this? But there were so many Guns N' Roses shirts. So
Yeah.
I mean, it was just because they were so huge. It's like, you grew up especially grow up in the suburbs. It's like kids are like, Guns N' Roses, Guns N' Roses. And, by the time I graduated high school in whatever, spring of 92, that world had completely changed,
Right.
completely changed. And, I remember being at, senior graduation and seeing, and the DJ playing Smells Like Teen Spirit and seeing all the football players and stuff like do
Excited
fake
about it.
moshing. It's like you're like, and you already knew like, wow, this sucks.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're like, this is lame. Like, whoa, like how did this happen? You know what I mean? But
Right.
so that basically by that fall, I joined that first band I was in, and by the end of the year, we were playing in, and clubs had already. It wasn't like it. It had the transition. I mean, people will argue, but in the big scheme, the transition happened pretty quickly because even into '93, like once, I mean, I really started playing a lot of shows. I don't remember seeing many. I mean, I guess there probably were metal bands, but like, they put them on a different night. It wasn't like there was
Right.
commingling. It really changed. And definitely like kind of like the more like the glam metal type of Motley Crue style had really got up there. So most of those bands had gone, like they had chosen like the heavier route. So,
Right.
I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, I think that I started visiting Hollywood in 1991, and
Yeah.
I was really excited. I made a point to walk past GIT. I wanted to see it. It was like, I thought it was going to be just like a dumb building.
Oh man, that was like, I was not on the college track, and the only catalog that I requested was GIT.
Right.
Thank God I didn't pay to, go in, I didn't end up going, I mean, I kind of, some part of me like wish I would have, but the music I was like, yeah, maybe I don't, to play this stuff, I'm already can play all this. I don't need to,
Right.
I'm good enough to play the band, so I don't need to.
Uh, I think, yeah, walking around back then, I didn't see a lot of glammy metal stuff going on. I did see flannel, which
Yeah.
I grew up in the Northwest, and so that was like nothing. new for me.
Yeah, and you have to remember too that LA was also the home of that scene that's part of like Jane's Addiction, and even Red Hot Chili Peppers kind of came out of that, that early like alternative.
Right.
Kind of those are like kind of like the proto alternative bands, and hard to think of Red Hot Chili Peppers that way now, but they really were kind of on the fringe of, you know,
It's not even easy to
yeah.
imagine Jane's Addiction the way that I imagined them when Ritual came out, because I thought that they were like one of the edgiest and most evocative bands I'd ever heard. It was just like genre bending, and it was kind of like Zeppelin, but even in some ways more exotic because it felt dirtier.
Well, plus the video, if you remember the Mountain Song videos, like the guys in the band are making out with each other. You're like,
Yeah, and it's just
whoa.
like what the hell? I mean, I grew up in a little logging town. That
Yeah.
was talk about nothing's shocking. That flipped me out. It didn't like I wasn't like uh, aghast by it, but I was like, "Oh, right." There weren't any out gay people in this town of 1,100 people in the mountains of
Yeah.
Washington.
Yeah. I
Not
mean,
yet.
it was I remember the first time hearing them, and it was, I feel like it's like a total like Beavis and Butthead moment. Like me and my friend like playing the tape, and we're like, this guy's voice is weird.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we got like, wow, the music's heavy, but this guy's voice is weird, But then we became super fans. We were like, this is like the best music ever.
Oh, it really, I mean,
Because it had everything that we liked. I mean, it was like, I get it. Like, wow, this guy can rip on the guitar, but
yeah.
it's not, it's not party music. It had like that kind of larger than life, mystical, transcendent type of thing to it. And yeah, I mean, they were just such a great band.
The only reason that I would still go for an RG now these days, and Ivan has RG, is because Dave played one.
Yeah,
Out of
yeah.
all the people that played, but the neck, I can't get with the neck. Did your choice to have your custom Pacifica dressed up? I like it kind of
Yeah, yeah,
hints
yeah. Well, no,
hints.
what happened is I actually did get an Ibanez RG 550, the Genesis,
Yeah.
which is like they put out a couple years ago. And I was like, wow, I really like this. Like I'm into playing this. And I started this other band called Night Dreamer, and where I play much more, even though it's like electronic band, but the kind of, I play very more like like a weird, like heavy metal guitar player, like a shoegaze heavy metal guitar player. And so I started using a guitar like that because I wanted to do all the whammy stuff, and like,
Yeah.
wow, this guitar is really cool. And then but the interesting thing is there actually is, and I don't have maybe this history totally correct, but there is some crossbreeding there, because essentially the RG was Steve Vai's like a stripped down version of the Gem, which Steve
Right.
brought that guitar to Ibanez. But one of the other companies that was in competition for him at that time was Yamaha, because Billy Sheehan was already playing Yamaha. And so I think they were
Oh.
one of the and there was like Tom Anderson made him one. And so,
Right.
but the same guy who I think was at Ibanez at the time, Rich Lasner, was like was in the guitar building community, or A&R, was kind of the artist rep at, I mean, he actually went to Yamaha after that and was kind of one of the main people behind designing the Pacifica. So it is the kind of the same
Stop
person
the
who's,
press for a
so
minute. Is there a prototype Steve Vai Yamaha Pacifica hanging
I don't
out
know.
over
I don't
there?
know. I don't know about that. I don't know if it even, I really don't know. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what I don't know. And but I know that they said that, and I've heard from the people at Yamaha that Steve was, Yamaha was one of the companies in the running, but then later the same gentleman who was responsible for bringing him to Ibanez, Rich Lasner, he left a few years later and went to Yamaha. And I think that's when they ended up kind of coming out with the Pacifica, which had, a similar type of thing. So the one, now when they built this guitar for me,
it was one of my favorite things at NAMM.
Yeah, I actually have two of them. There's a white one too.
Oh, you don't need two.
It's more, it's not really, it's more like the neck is actually closer to a gem than an RG.
So it's thin.
It's a little bit thicker than the RG, and it's, but it feels great. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And Pat, the builder at Yamaha, just did an amazing job. And so, so like the body contours and like the neck joint and stuff is all very modern and contemporary. Nothing like, even like the RG, the Genesis is kind of built more like an old style. And so you really, when you go back from playing like these guitars that have like a better, like the kind of rounded cutaway and stuff, and like you can get to those, like there's nothing blocking you getting to the upper frets. When you play like a guitar actually from the 80s before they kind of developed that technology, you really notice like, oh, like this is a total buzzkill when you go up the neck, but yeah, these, and so there's that. And then, obviously the Edge tremolo by Ibanez is definitely like its own thing and has its own feel and its own sound. So these guitars have, these have Floyd Roses on them, but I actually have two new ones coming that actually have FU tone.
Cool
bridges. Yeah. Cause, which are great. And, too, and then the pickups on these are Seymour Duncan, Hunter, in the bridge, but then they actually, made a neck. It's the George Lynch basically pickup. That's kind of like his underlocking key era sound, because that song The Hunter was on that out. So they call this pickup The Hunter. And it's basically emulating, it's his pickup, and it's kind of that era of his tone, which was one of my favorite lead sounds. So I was like, oh well. And so it's pretty hot, it's the output is really high. And it's just great. I mean, and then they custom wound a matching neck pickup, and then there's a SSL 5 in the middle, which is just, it's a little bit hotter single coil because those other pickups are so hot that you have to have something that kind of has enough juice to keep up. And I don't ever use the middle position just on its own. I just have it there just so I can do the out of phase positions, 4 and 2. And the fluorescent one actually has a Sustainiac in the neck as well.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, which is a very Vi Satriani thing, too.
Right.
Yeah, and I have to admit, I use the shit out of it. Like it's, the first one I got was a Reverend, the Reese Gabrel's guitar.
Yeah.
I bought one of those from Reverend because they brought one to the show to show me, because Billy Corgan, plays Reverend guitars, and I love those guys, and I have a bunch of Reverend guitars. So I was like, oh fuck, man, I gotta buy this. So I bought that guitar and started using in the studio.
Really
started
cool.
using, and I'm semi-friendly with Reeves. We text here and there, and I say, hey, dude, I just got one of your guitars. It's amazing, and the Sustainiac is how cool. And he said, be careful, it's an addiction. And he goes, so I only put it on that one model, because he's got like 3 models with Reverend. He's like, I only put it on the one so I don't overuse it. And so I know what he means, because it's like once you kind of have it, it's just like having that.
Right.
It's like having that extra juice that you just like. But and like I said, this other band I play in, Night Dreamer, it's like I use because it's electronic and there's a lot of synths and stuff, and so I can play a lot more free. It is all like programmed drums, so I can play a lot more freely. And I use like a pretty crazy guitar sound where it's just like 2 fuzz pedals, kind of more direct. There's no amp, with a bunch of like delays and pitch shifting stuff. And with the Sustainiac, you can get it. Crazy things just happen,
right?
So I really like to have that kind of dynamic relationship between effects where I can react to what's going on. So you play something, you're like, whoa, like the way the delay's reacting to that note I just played. It's very reactive, and the sustaining act just adds like a whole other element to it. So it's really, really cool. But like I said, I have basically 4 of those Pacificas now, and I only put it on one. So I only kept them because I took Reeves' advice, because otherwise, and the thing is having the pickup does change the sustaining, because it's kind of a buffered signal because of the way the electronics, it does change the sound of the guitar a little bit.
It's kind of like having a Bigsby.
That the guitars that don't,
it's kind of like having a Bigsby on a guitar, right? If you have a guitar with a Bigsby on it and you're playing it, you will end up, pulling on that Bigsby in places that you never, like, if it's your backup, it's ridiculous. But
like I said, those guitars have locking trems, so it's like you can do the whole, like, you can hold the guitar by shake it around, and
you can do the crossroads thing.
Totally. Absolutely.
I'm trying to turn my phone off here, because I think what happens is every time something buzzes in, we're freezing up for because I live out in the country, so I have terrible cell out here, so even my phone goes through the Wi-Fi. It's
Wi-Fi, sure, yeah.
Country living.
Yeah.
So how long were you in that band?
That band Violent Burning, I was probably in that band like off and on 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
I left at one point, then came back, and it's just whatever, the tales of a struggling band. And then
long enough to get a lot of experience playing gigs.
Yeah, and then after that, I joined this band called the Lassie Foundation, which was more of like a shoegazer-y type of. Violent Burning was very much like a alternative rock band, like and like in the Smashing Pumpkins' Failure, kind of big, huge, epic rock songs with spacey guitar. But then I went more like the indie route in the Lassie Foundation, and got even played even more out of tune, and what I mean, like I someone recently sent me some like live recordings from and I was like all excited. I was like, oh man, this is gonna be great. Like I was hoping that I would be pleasantly surprised by like what I heard, and then I started listening. I'm like, oh my god! Like I was like, my guitar is like so out of tune all the time, and I didn't know what I was doing. I don't know how I used to try to play good, and then I totally was like, oh, I don't care. Like I can just play sloppy and just have fun, and whatever, it worked for the time. And in that band, I was in for a long time, and we made like quite a few records, and we're finally actually remastering everything and going to put everything back up on all the whatever streaming platforms, because we put out stuff on a lot of small indie labels that some are still in existence, some went defunct, and so now we got everything, and so we're going to just put it out.
And so you joined this band in the 90s, like late 90s, right?
96 maybe 97.
So people had pedal boards then, but this was not the golden age of pedal boards. Like,
well, yeah, like in the Violent Burning, I had a rack. I had an ADA MP1. I didn't use any. I didn't have any pedals. I had an MP1.
Really?
MP1, a Quadraverb, and a Rocktron and Teleflex.
and a MIDI controller.
In a MIDI controller, yeah.
Right.
And then a 4x12 cabinet.
And you sold all those things for like $50 in 1999.
Sadly, I'm a gear hoarder, and I have almost everything.
Still have them.
I have the MP1 still. I do.
It's actually pretty rad.
Mine doesn't work anymore. Like I try it, like it needs to be like, there's probably some capacitor or something in it that
right.
needs to be changed. But yeah, it was bitching. I was like, wow, like this is really, because before that I had, like just a Fender amp or something, and like some pedals, whatever. But it didn't. I was like, I can't sound like
all the sounds.
Dawkins or what, you know what I mean? And then once I got that, because I actually remember the reason I ended up getting that is because I remember reading a Guitar World article where Billy and James in the early Pumpkins, that Gish record, they used the MP1. So I was like, I gotta get one of those. And so I found one like pretty cheap. And
they did.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Oh yeah.
That.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought
all of Gish is the MP1.
Huh.
Yeah.
Did you ever get any of that Marshall rack gear that was so hot? Like the JMP?
Oh, the JMP one. No, I never got. I wanted to, but then by the time like I was like, okay, I'm gonna get the JMP one. I was like, okay, I went back to using, like I left the Violet Burn and was in this other band, and so I started using I still have this amp too. It's a '66 Fender Bandmaster. It was a great, amazing sounding amp.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at the time, I actually just wrote a article for or a blog post for Line 6's website for their Helix for the modeling, and I'm kind of doing sharing some shoegaze guitar sounds, and I talked about how at that time I went and got my first credit card so I could go buy a Fender Jazzmaster, because nobody had them, because I would see pictures of Ride and My Bloody Valentine and Sonic Youth and Dinosaur Jr. I'm like, oh, they have these Jazzmasters. So '96, it wasn't like, I mean, now everybody plays a Jazzmaster, but nobody had them back then. And
I mean, there are Jazzmaster copies now. There are companies that have their entire foundation.
Well, that definitely was not the case in 1996. And I went into my local music store in Orange County, and I've been going there for, and they were a Fender dealer, and they had tons of Fender guitars and stuff, but they didn't have any Jazzmasters. And so he opens up the catalog. He goes, well, they have Japanese reissues. So there's the only time, so you can get it in red, candy apple red, or sunburst. I was like, candy apple red.
Yeah.
And so I got a Jazzmaster, and then, there weren't any boutique really pedals at the time. I mean, very few, if there were. Maybe Full Tone was starting to come out, but I don't even know if in '96 it was like the pedals. What was out that we used were those.
Way Huge was around.
No, there were the green Russian Big Muff reissue that were made in Russia. Those. So I had one of those, and then it was like a Rat pedal.
Yep.
I actually used the Rat pedal and then the Turbo Rat. So I actually, because the Big Muff always never, like live, you couldn't hear it, so I'd stop you. So I used the regular Rat pedal and the Turbo Rat together, and then I had a Ibanez Sound Tank digital delay, a wah pedal, and maybe the Ibanez Purple chorus.
Yeah,
and that's it. And that's it. That's all. It's really all I had.
You could make some pretty wild
time.
Sounds with that back then.
Tons. Yeah. And I always ran the delay in front of the distortion. So the delays would always get fried by 2 levels of distortion. Because that was like making noisier and crazier. Yeah.
That was an intentional thing. It wasn't like.
Oh, yeah. Because that band that I mentioned earlier called Medicine, they had this guitar player, amazing guitar player called Brad Lehner. And Brad distortion unit was his I think it was like a Yamaha 4-track, and so he plug his guitar, he had a couple wah pedals and and what did he have? He had an Alesis maybe MIDI Verb 2, a digital delay, and he ran it all in front of the 4-track, and then the 4-track put it in input record and have the levels all the way up. and then he ran into a JC 120 on one side and a super reverb on the other. So everything was distorted by and it was like this crazy, beautiful, aggressive sound that sounded like one guy is playing, but it sounded like 30 people were playing, you know? And so that was kind of the inspiration. It was like, we wanted to be like, oh, I want to, you know, but mine was like a very pale in comparison to what he did.
Right. Can you imagine going backwards now from the technology that we have access to? Like, I mean, you have a Helix. You can dial up any imaginable sound that you were trying to get back then in probably 5 minutes. And back then, it really took. I mean, you just didn't have the tools. Or, I mean, there have been effects that have been invented since then, right?
Yeah, in that article I wrote, I basically said, you know, what's so great about something like Helix is it's got to sound great. You know, if it didn't sound good, I wouldn't use it. I mean, the sounds are great and it's very usable. And, you know, I've been using it for quite a few years now, so I'm very conversant in the language of that it speaks and stuff. But I said, but what it's really, when you think about it, what's so cool about it, it's like, it's basically a museum of of the history of amps, speakers, and pedals and effects of the last, from 1950 to the present, basically. And you get to take that with you wherever you go, whether it's on my laptop, if I'm recording somewhere, or a Helix Stomp that I can put in my backpack. And how cool is that? So when you're creating, you're like, wow, I could do, like, I want to play a JC 120 with the chorus and the delay and totally be with the compressor and get that very 80s kind of chimey, you know, post-punk, new wave kind of sound, and then go to, like, I can use the Rev amp and be like in completely modern high gain with the hit, you know, one button. And I really love that.
You know what you should do? You've got more juice with those guys than I do. You should talk to them and see if they'll model the Tascam 4-track to put in line. And you can.
Well, yeah, I know, which would be actually, I'll show you this.
Then you can get that sound, man. You can.
Well, I do. Well, I have, because actually this is Brad, because I'm friends with him now. There's this little Tascam. It's called because obviously people won't be able to see this, but it's called the Tascam GS30D Guitar Amp Simulator. So it obviously, but basically this EQ is the same that was in their 4-track.
Guitar Amp Simulator.
So what he found out is that this essentially sounds the same.
Was that, what era is that? Is that like 19?
It's got to be from the 80s. Got to be from the 80s. And
so that was like one of the earliest amp simulators?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Rockman was around, and maybe who were the Tech 21? When did they come around?
Yeah, probably 90s too, right?
Early 90s, I'd guess.
Yeah. So this, you can definitely get that. You can get the sound. So I do use it from time to time.
You do?
You know, when I want to rip. So but you know, because it's obviously I wanted to put it in the loop of my Helix. But because I worried, and I have two of them because I'm like paranoid that way. So I got one. I was like, oh, I like this. And then as soon as I was like, I realized I like this, I went on eBay and bought another one. When the first one I bought, it was like dirt cheap. Now people have kind of realized, like, oh, you can do the Brad Later medicine thing. So any people who are like kind of really deep into the shoegaze guitar scene are like, they went and bought these. So the last one, I actually had to buy it from someone in Japan.
What does it sound like?
It sounds like if you plugged into your 4-track and turned the level up way too high, and it sounds like, you know, where you'd be like, oh, like something's wrong. But it's cool. But if you try to use it as like it was meant to use, it just bum you out.
Right. If you tried to take it to a gig, run your pedals in front of it and have that go to the soundboard.
It just bum you. It just, like, I mean, literally, when you use it, you just turn every knob all the way up and turn every button, all the drive button, the presence button, the pre-gain up, and just turn. And it's like, it's just maybe, depending on what guitar you use, you might dial like the high end back just a tiny bit, but most, it's like, actually you just need it full blown.
Do you have any, so I'm still trying to wrap my head around this. First of all, I love that I made a joke about you having that modeled, and then you're like, "Well, wait, check this
Well,
out."
and the funny one before, so I was like, I gotta get. I was like, if I could get someone to clone basically this circuits, because if I want to take this and put it on my pedal board for playing live, like if someone steps on this or something,
Right.
so, but I literally cannot find a schematic for this thing anywhere, even on the internet. And I even wrote Tascam, which is TAC or something. And they're like, we don't have anything in our archives for that.
Really?
They're like, we don't even have anything.
Someone's got to have it somewhere, right?
I don't know. Yeah. Maybe the guy who designed it in Japan got it.
So let me ask you this. What was Tascam's intended purpose for that product?
I think if you had a 4-track or 8-track or something and you wanted to record, at home, you could use that.
You would plug into
it was like
that.
Basically it was like a pod, like an early pod or something. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like, but it just had like, basically, just want EQ and EQ and gain.
Sitting here without thinking too hard, it seems very forward thinking, but people have been recording guitar plugged direct into a console for years.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Revolution, right? The Beatles.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't listen too hard because it doesn't sound very good. Really, I'm sorry. I know
it's
a lot of people.
It's a certain type of sound. No, right. I know it is. It is. Yeah. It is a certain. It's a different. Yeah. This though, done the right way, it's like Brad. He actually runs it into an amp, so it's really more like a pedal. So if you run it direct, it's harsher. So when sometimes like I plug this into a amp sim, and it just sounds like a distortion pedal. It doesn't sound as gnarly as I want sometimes. It actually sounds too good.
But you run it in the loop of your Helix.
Yeah, but I often, because I want to be able to route effects either pre or post that sound, because I have some things that I like to do to get certain tonalities that I like. So I want to run maybe like a delay in front of this thing, but I want to put like a bigger ping pong delay behind it to get like a spread. And I really like, there's something called the doubler on Helix, I think. And it's basically supposed to be for double tracking, but I basically turned it up really high and do like 2 or 3 doubles and then turn the slop up all the way. And it creates like a really cool, almost like chorusing effect, like a very unique type of chorus type of sound. And so I like to use that a lot. So that's why I put it in the loop, because then I can do all the awesome signal routing that I want to be able to do and have that anywhere in the signal chain.
What if you could go back in time 25 years and tell yourself, just fucking wait, because in 15 or 20 years, you're going to be able to sit down at a computer and program a pedal by tweaking, knobs that aren't really there and routing things that couldn't exist in the real world without a Mick Mars sized, rack system. And it's going to be, small enough to fit in your backpack.
Amazing, right?
I would have lost my shit and told you you're full of shit.
Yeah, I'm a big, at the end of the day, for me, why I like this stuff is I think that the sonic quality just keeps on getting better and better. And it doesn't, some people may differ, but I've gotten used, because even with live with the Pumpkins, I use Helix for effects, but we still use regular amps, as well. But we play on in-ears, so I've gotten used to hearing my guitar mic'd and playing on basically really nice headphones. And when you hear something like Helix or Axe Effects or Kemper, that's what you're hearing. You're hearing a mic'd guitar sound. That's what people go, it doesn't sound the same as my amp. Well, it's not really meant to. It would only
Right.
sound like your amp if you were listening to your amp mic through a console in front of studio monitors. That's what this sounds like.
Right.
You know, so I think when people go like, well, it doesn't feel the same, like it's just, of course it doesn't, because it's not really meant to be the same. But for me, the sonic quality doesn't inhibit my playing. I really love, to me, what I get in terms of flexibility and time is so worth it, because
Right.
you in the studio, you're like dialing it. Like if you were like, oh, let's try this amp with that pedal, it's like, okay, that's could be half an hour, and then you're like, no, that doesn't actually
Probably
sound
more
good.
with all the distractions and the conversations and everything
Yeah,
else.
yeah. So no wonder why records took 6 months to make.
Or more.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm a big fan, because and to be honest, I really don't like anymore. Like I've kind of changed. Like I really don't like to have a lot of good gear around. I kind of realize, like, I just like if I mean for if I'm working on Pumpkin stuff, I have just a few guitars, a less some type of Gibson, um, and then a couple different Yamahas, and then that's it. I don't really. I mean, need that. I realize you don't really need that much. I just want to play.
Right.
I just want to play, what I mean? And with these new Pacificas that I'm playing, there really are, like, that's the guitar I want. They play so good. They're so easy to play. They sound amazing. The construction is like, when I go play something else, that just bums me out. Like, it really is like, wow, this is like a precision. I've never played nicer guitars. Like, I've never played anything that just worked so well.
Yeah. I got my first Pacifica. I got the one that's got this year I got it. It's got a soap bar in the neck and a humbucker in the
The
bridge.
611 or something like that.
It's great. I love it. I love
I
it.
mean, honestly, for those production guitars in that price range, it's like unmatched.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
I'll touch back on the Steve Vai and shred guitar things. Still to this day, if I see a seafoam green guitar, I get really excited. One of these days, I'm gonna get a seafoam green shred guitar.
Yeah. I mean, believe me, the seafoam is cool, but his is more like the lime green, like the really bright. Yeah.
Well, there was one that he had
Mm,
on the
a couple
cover
years
of
ago.
Guitar for the Practicing Musician. It's the first issue that I ever bought, and I think what was in that Tobacco Road was the transcription in there. It must have been 86. Just for some reason, I feel like I know the month of it because it was the year I got my guitar. So it was like
Yeah.
November or December of 86. And it was, I don't know what it was. It might have been a Charvel or a Valley Arts, but it definitely had the early version of the Gem pickup configuration, like the two humbuckers and a single coil in the middle, black guard, and then that like green with the
I
maple
think that
neck.
was a Charvel. Yeah. The green meanie is, I think, what he called it. Yeah, the green. That was like, yeah.
Still, to me, that's like when I think of Steve Vai, that's the guitar I think of.
Well, yeah. That's what I think, what he played a lot on that first David Lee Roth,
Yeah.
Alcatraz, Flexible was probably, that guitar was, I don't know, maybe not if it was then, maybe he was playing something. He probably wasn't playing it then because that's pretty early, but yeah. That's the classic pre-Gem guitar.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
I know. I wish I would have bought a Gem back in the 80s, because the original Gems are so expensive now. Who would have thought, right?
There's kind of also nothing cooler than a floral gem. Back then, I thought it was corny, and now I finally get it. I'm like,
It's so amazing,
really
right?
hot.
I know. I get, like, like now, I kind of ran the whole gamut from, I was into that stuff when I was young, And then I went through the 90s and became like entrenched in that type of thinking about music. And, and I think it's a good trajectory to go on from like, I went from like, let's learn technique to like, to where you can almost become anti-technique because it's really about expressing yourself in a way, the way that you want to, which is really good. And so now fast forward to the present and why like I still love Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth, Lee Ronaldo, Kevin Shields. Those are, they're like some of my favorite guitar players of all time, but I equally love Joe Satriani and Steve Vai. And I know that's so ideologically opposed to some people. They were like, how could you like this and this? But, the reason, and I, was taught when I was taking some lessons with Michelangelo, I said, to me, this kind of speed playing, it's a texture, just like putting like your guitar through a reverse reverb and a delay with a bunch of chorus creates a certain texture. This kind of sheets of sound type of thing that you can do with speed playing is a texture too. And I want to have access to it.
Right.
I want to be able to do that kind of stuff. Sometimes I hear those types of things and I don't want, it's like if it's a lack of technique that's stopping me from being able to do that, then that's, the work that I need to do on my end,
I think it's cool. This reminds me of when I read an article in a magazine back then, and George Lynch, I remember, said, "Oh, I took some time off and moved out to the desert. Maybe he moved to Arizona or out to the Mojave Desert or something." And he said he took guitar lessons. And I thought, well, that's just crazy. Like, you're the greatest guitar player in the world, I thought,
Yeah.
But even someone who, is fully capable and on top of the world and can play rings around most people can all, you can always learn something.
I think I know it's so funny because Michelangelo is so nice. He's like, I won't tell anybody you're taking lessons from me. And I was like, I don't care. You can tell everybody. I don't have any, I'm not ashamed to say like, hey, I want to take some lessons. What's wrong with that? Like, if you truly care about the instrument, you truly care about,
right.
There should be no ego in that way. It's not like it'd be one thing if I was like, hey, I have to hire you to show me how to play Smashing Pumpkins songs, like my own gig. You know what I mean? I didn't need to hire him to do that. You know what I mean? Right. I was like, hey, I want to add some vocabulary and techniques to what I do already, and it was already things I was working on. It was more like, because I had been taking. By the time I took lessons from Michelangelo, I had been already like 3 years into taking jazz guitar lessons too, right, with the guy. I started in Chicago and then I had a guy out here in LA too. And so it wasn't like he needed to show me harmony, like, right, oh, you play this scale over this scale. It was literally, I just needed some like consulting on like, am I holding my, to get maximum speed and efficiency, what can I do to, it's like going to like get like a tennis lesson or a golf lesson where like, hey, your swing, you need to straighten your back, like this, right, kind of stuff to get kind of maximum velocity and power, or that kind of stuff.
I had this ridiculous image pop into my mind when you cracked the joke about Michelangelo teaching you to play songs in your gig. And that is, do you remember in the 90s when James Hetfield like burned his hand, and I think one of their roadies played the gig, right? Like one of their roadies, I think, or maybe it might have been a guy from Metal Church.
Yeah,
it's happened a couple times. I think he broke his hand once skating.
I think they had a couple different people, but yeah, and one of the guys definitely was the guy from Metal Church.
But it occurred to me, what if Billy
who might have been a guitar tech or something?
Could have been, yeah.
Yeah.
What if Billy burned himself and you were like, hey, hold on a second. I've been training for this moment. And you busted out the double neck and you covered the gig.
I remember one time it was like Lassie Foundation was still around, but I had gone to UCLA to get my doctorate in literature. but I still, because I was from LA, I was still in the, unlike most people for grad school, I didn't have to move away. I actually got to stay in LA. And so I still we'd play some gigs. And so we had a gig at Spaceland or something. And it was like, I remember Saturday afternoon, and I had to go. I was like, oh, fuck, man, I need to go get some strings. Yeah. So I went to West LA Music on Santa Monica.
Yeah.
And I walk in the door, and it's the middle of a fucking clinic. And there's Michael with the double neck just like going. And I was like, whoa, and I have to go. I'm like, well, I got to go to the counter and be like, sorry, can I get a couple packs of strings? Yeah. And then when I took a couple lessons from him, I was like, dude, once I told him that story, and he remembered the day exactly. He's got an amazing memory. He knew like exactly when it was, and like he remembered
seeing you walk in and buy
strings. He didn't remember seeing me walk in because he was in the middle of he was literally playing the double neck. I can just imagine you're just walking in off the street to your local music store to buy a couple packs of strings, and there's Michelangelo playing the double neck.
Let me ask you this. I mean, I'm sorry we're talking about him so much, and we're not, and because you're my guest, not him. But but it's so amazing what he does. Can he do that and have a conversation in the way that like some players can strum chords or even play?
I would say he probably 80% of the time. I'm sure if he's doing something super crazy, but I think for the most part, yeah, I absolutely think he could be talking to you while he's doing this stuff.
Do you think that performing music in that manner is like doing crossword puzzles for your brain? Do you think it helps keep your brain healthy? And probably,
I think it does, because actually when I was taking jazz lessons, my teacher, there's a lot more older people in the jazz world.
Yeah.
And, and most of the time it's the physical part of their body that goes first besides, and they say that playing jazz really does keep the mind sharp. So I really am. I think that that's actually very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I do crosswords. And Scrabble.
What's Sudoku? What's it called?
I don't know. Sudoku.
I don't know. I've never done one. I tried for 2 minutes. I'm like, I can't do this.
I don't even know what it is. I'm a traditionalist. I like Scrabble.
Yeah.
I like crossword puzzles.
Crossword puzzles are like, I tried to, my dad always did crossword, he always does them. And I try to do them. I'm like, and I got, I always did a PhD for in literature. I'm like, I have a pretty good vocabulary, I think, and I can never do crossword puzzles. I have no, I think it's like you have to know how to do them.
It's not necessarily about vocabulary. It's some of it is trivia and popular culture, and a lot of it is strategy. Like sort out the simplest things first, and then go back through, and then you sort of slowly unlock. There's a theme to every puzzle. For the New York Times puzzles, at least, there's like the long questions have a theme to them, even if they're very loose and esoteric.
Oh, okay. I see. I did see that's already. You see, now when I attempt one next time, I'll have at least a little bit better strategy, try to figure out what's kind of taking place here.
So what did you intend to do with your degree? Were you going to be a teacher?
Oh yeah, I was full blown, going to go into academia. I basically, wasn't planning on having a music career any longer. Yeah. And I didn't, and it wasn't like I made that choice because I felt like I had failed at music. Obviously, I wasn't making millions of dollars playing music at the time, but really what had happened is I was going to school and I just fell in love with the literary world. And as I tend to do when I become into, when I get into something, I tend to become obsessive. And so it just was like, I was like, okay, great. I got my BA in this. And it's like, I'm going to go to graduate school. And So I, was there, and I was I was probably like 5 or 6 years into it. Probably it takes about 7 or 8 years to go from a BA to a PhD, depending. I mean, some people can do it faster, but those are like superhumans. You know what I mean?
Right.
But somewhere in the middle of that is when someone was like, "Hey, Smashing Pumpkins are getting back together and they're looking for a guitar player. I think, I'm going to recommend you." And because I wasn't like out here in LA auditioning for bands. Never auditioned for a band.
You hadn't played a gig in how long when that opportunity came along to you?
Well, my band Lassie Foundation was still like we'd play a couple gigs a year, or here and there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because we were all doing different things. Everybody had like their jobs and careers. We weren't like we weren't a full-time band anymore. Like we were kind of in our heyday, but we still play gigs. And I think actually when I first started like the process of auditioning for the Pumpkins, Billy came to one of our shows because we had basically a mutual friend, and she was like, "Oh, I'll take you to their playing whatever Saturday night. I'll take you to the gig." So yeah.
Huh. That's pretty inspiring, I think. I was just talking to someone about this a couple days ago, and he said, the great thing about music is you just don't know what's going to happen in the next 24 hours.
Truly don't. You know what I mean? Like I certainly didn't like it wasn't like, oh, I need to get in a band or I need to join a big band. Like it just kind of one day I was like sitting at home, or my apartment, wherever I was, and my friend was, actually the bass player of Lassie was like, "Hey, one of my friends is working at the management company, like in the office, and so asked me if, knew I was a musician. So it's like, hey, they're putting the word out, and you should totally do this." And so I was like, I was a big fan of the band. I really loved the band. So I'd seen the Pumpkins like 4 or 5 times, and so I said, why the heck not? And
Right.
so but it was weird. It's one of those weird things, Mike, because I I can't if I have to be honest, like I somehow already knew like years before that I was gonna play in that band someday. It's like the weirdest thing. Like I just knew I could play in that band. Like because
Right.
it just was because there's very few bands out there that really captured all the different elements that I was actually into so it was like
Sure.
and so I was like, wow, but it was more than just like, oh, I'd like to play with that. But it's like I kind of just knew it was going to happen. And it was like one of those things where I was the first guitar player to audition.
Well,
And
that was unfair for everyone else.
Jimmy Chamberlain, because actually Billy wasn't there. It was like because Jimmy is me and this a bass player, and I could say I know him. He
Yeah.
was like perfect, found the guy. But they were like, okay, we have to go, and they probably auditioned 15 different guitar players over a few months. It wasn't like they had just everybody come down one day. It was like, why don't you come, learn these 3 songs, play the songs a couple times, hang
Do you remember
out.
which 3 songs?
Well, because I don't remember the first day because I probably went to jam and do that like 10, 12 times.
Right.
It'd be like, oh, let's do these songs, and because what ended up happening is Jimmy was like, well, I think Jeff's pretty like you're kind of I'm gonna pencil you in a little bit.
Right.
We're gonna try out some other but so then he started using me to help audition bass players. So he'd be like, hey, you want to come? We're gonna audition this different so it's like I got to play with all these different bass players,
right.
And and then finally it was basically kind of narrowed down to like where they thought, okay, it's like me and this girl Ginger, who ended up getting the gig. And so Jim was like, all right, we're going to have Billy come down. All four of us will finally do the jam, and I remember we were playing like, anyway, like it was just funny because like, we had been ever like me and Jimmy and Ginger had been jamming for a couple of weeks and we're like, man, this is sound, everyone was like, wow, it's starting to sound really good. Like we sound like this is cool. This sounds great.
Yeah.
Billy comes in and he's just like, you can't put your amp there. Why? You need to move your amp over there. So I'm like, okay, you're like, that's where I put my amp there. I'm like, okay, no, cool, So it's like, and then we start playing like tonight, and he's like, whoa, why? That's not. It doesn't. It doesn't go like that. Like you have that, like you got the picking pattern wrong. Why are you playing? Like that? And I'm like, okay, what I mean. Then there's like he's like, I don't want to play these. Like, let's just play a new song that we're recording right now. So he played, and so like
So you're learning a song on the fly.
So he's like, let's play this song that was on Zeitgeist, and it's called United States. Crazy, kind of proggy metal song.
Right.
Totally out of my wheelhouse for the time. And so they played, it had all these crazy moves in it, and him and Jimmy are like connected, what I mean? So they're just doing all these like, what I mean? It's just like, it's just like all these notes just flying by, and it's like louder than anything that I had ever experienced. I mean, my indie bands, like now you're like with this, like, Jimmy, I realized that, with all the others was kind of half playing.
Right.
And now that it was like, he was like you getting the real deal. And it was just like showing you like, hey, this is what it's going to really be like. And so it was just horrible. It was honestly, it was terrible. I remember I got home after that session and I literally walked into my little studio apartment in West LA and just fell face first onto my bed and just like laid there for, for like
well, that
an
was
hour.
fun while it lasted.
Because you were just like, because it had been months and months of working. Like I would totally neglecting my studies. I would sit there for hours and hours learning all these tunes and getting all the parts exactly right. And I was, to where like, hey, this is it. And then it was right around Christmas. So they broke for Christmas. They went back, Billy and Jimmy went back to Chicago. And then the new year came around. I didn't hear from them. I was like, totally fucked it. My mind, it's like, it was like that, like you got dumped by a girl and like, she's not calling you back. You just gotta know, like, like she's not calling back, and then one day I was on campus and I get a call from Jimmy and I'm like, hello? He's like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, he's like, yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that last time we jammed. I'm just like, do we have to, And I'm like, sure. He goes, yeah, Billy and I, we thought it went pretty good. I'm like, what? Like, he's like, I thought it went pretty good. But, if you really want the gig, we think you need to be able to improve, in A, B, and C, whatever. Yeah. And if you think you can do that, we'd like to kind of continue this process. And I was like, yeah, of course, So I went to, because I'd always been like more of like a lead guitar player, sure, in that band. And I never really played that much kind of heavy metal. Because it's not heavy metal, but like kind of like those heavier kind of syncopated rhythms and stuff, It's one thing to listen to it and play along, but it's another thing to play it in the room. You know what I mean?
A lot of that stuff has, I mean, I don't have to tell you. It's like telling Noah about the flood, right? But it's heavy and
yeah. And it's very idiosyncratic. It's very idiosyncratic because you see many people like on YouTube try to play pumpkins and they're playing kind of the right notes, but it sounds totally off. Like it's not right because like the feels and the way you have to kind of bend and shake the strings to get the sound. And so what I did is, I went actually back to my friend Michael, who was the lead singer and rhythm guitar player in the Violet Bernie. He was a really great rock rhythm player. And I said, and spent a couple days with him, like, can you give me some tips on how to sound better as a rhythm player, And so I just worked with him for a little bit, and then and they were like, and then whatever, 14 years later, here I am rocking with Michelangelo. And
it's crazy. You've been in the Pumpkins for almost half of the band's existence.
Yeah.
But you're still the new guy.
Well, no, now I notice in all the press releases, a longtime guitarist, Jeff.
Good.
Whatever the new Pumpkins album features, original members, Billy Corgan, James Iha, Jimmy Schroeder, and longtime guitarist Jeff Schroeder.
Good. It's like like
I'm
Ron Wood.
Ron
Wood, the new guy.
Longtime guitarist, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have not. I don't think I've actually ever seen the band live at any point.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to me. But do you know who's the hugest fan in the whole world? Is my wife.
Well then see now you can surprise her next time. Where are you guys at?
We live very close to Reeves, actually. We're up here in the Hudson Valley.
Where you cut out for a second.
Oh, we're up here. We live near Reeves, Gabrels.
What's the
near Hudson, between Hudson and Albany, New York. Yeah.
So what would be I guess is like Buffalo or something going to be closer? Albany. But we never go to. I've all my years of rock and roll, I've never played in Albany.
Right. I bet you guys probably played the Saratoga Springs Amphitheater though. Yeah. And that's, I'm pretty certain. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have seen you guys on the Guns shows, either in New Jersey or in Boston.
I know. I was really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I bet. I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I know that they're rescheduling some shows, and whether or not we'll do them with them or not it's like, all that stuff is
right
up in the air.
How do you perform on the records at all?
Oh yeah.
And
yeah,
so I've
played on every record since Tear Garden was the first, those like kind of EPs. I played on the Tear Garden EPs, and then Oceania, Monuments, and what was the Shiny No So Bright, the last one, and then the new one too. Yeah.
The new record is a double record.
20 songs. Yeah.
That's pretty, like, considering the time that we are living in, that's pretty bold, I think, and admirable.
I think that's why I think that was pretty much the reasoning behind it, to just,
yeah,
to be bold and to be like, hey, we're not out here to just go out and play classics and be like a greatest hits band. We're still like a fully functioning band.
Right.
Yeah. I think it makes a big statement. Yeah.
And also not trying to put out a single and go tour for 18 months on it.
Yeah. I mean, so it was fun. It was it took a long time. From the time of just Billy I remember starting to write and demo songs to the time, it was over a year of kind of working on it. We did tours and stuff, and we certainly don't work together like in the room all at the same time. He'll work a lot on his own, then we'll get together and for periods of time, but yeah, it's not like we were like in the studio like every day, like jamming it out for a year. It's not like that.
I don't know that there just aren't that many bands that can do that.
There's no money to support people to do that anymore. Right. It's like people can certainly do it, but you have to pay for it yourself now. There's no record company that's going to pay for you to be,
right.
Changing, microphones on the snare drum for 7 days.
Right. That ship, as they say, has sailed.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Billy, I swear I saw a video of him at some point. I might be imagining this, of him playing like a Van Halen song. And this was like back when it wasn't cool. Like this was in the grunge years when it wasn't really cool to fly your roots. Like you're supposed to be like, no, man, feelings. But
I grew up on, I listened to Black Flag or something like
right, yeah,
that. Yeah.
exactly. But he can play that shit, right?
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, he can definitely play like rock guitar. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I think
But
it's
he,
really
the thing about what is really honestly like about is he's not like he wouldn't be able to sit there and play Eruption note for note because he did the better thing, which is he completely just developed his own style. Like he plays like really like if you watch him play, it's a really strange, unique way of playing the guitar. And so it's been for me having to learn all those riffs and play them. It's really took a lot of work to get it to sound correct. So yeah, he's I think what Billy is his like I said, and I think it's honestly the best. If I could give advice to any musician, is it's great if you want to learn how to play other people's stuff. No, and I really like to do that kind of work because it's kind of a learning process for me. Because then I can if I learn something, then I've learned now how to take those things and
absorb
kind of defamiliarize them and then make them my own. But I think for him, he was able to kind of digested all these different from Robert Smith to Eddie Van Halen to Judas Priest to Black Sabbath to Joy Division, and then create this amalgamation of a style that's completely his own.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes you a legend, because as we know, you can go and look on YouTube and find a zillion people, a 9-year-old kid who can play Eruption note for note.
Right.
Doesn't mean that kid is going to go anywhere in the music industry.
Or that kid is ever going to learn another song. That might be the only thing that kid can play.
But what the industry really does reward to some degree is unique innovators. And there's only one person that can play the guitar him. There's only one person who can sing like him. Yeah. And that's really what makes it. That's why 30 years into a band, people are still willing to come and watch the band play, because there's nowhere else you can get that experience. And that's and if you listen to guys like really what they're saying, even like a Steve Vai or something, is they're always like, it's really about developing your unique individuality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I made things hard for myself. Like I would, instead of playing something in like a first position scale, I would move it so that I started with my pinky, and then move up so that it was awkward. And so it created a little bit of tension in the musical movement. And it's been something that, like, as I've gotten older, and I'm like, man, I could have really saved myself a lot of headache, because I don't think it mattered. I don't know if it mattered. Perhaps it did. Perhaps being able to play something fluidly in its most difficult form does something for when you finally decide to take it easy on yourself.
Yeah. What I've learned from getting and studying like the masters, whether it's Paul Gilbert's picking or Yngwie Malmsteen's picking style, is they do things that actually are efficient. Right. Most of the time, like when you learn on your own, you end up doing a lot of that, like myself included, you end up doing these things that are like, there's like a way easier way to do that. You know what I mean? Or, but that's, but then there's an argument, and I've seen someone like Jakey Lee or something say that why he was able to develop his individual style is because he did learn stuff wrong, because everybody took home the record and was like, okay, how am I going to play the Immigrant Song or something? And then you're like, this is what I think Page is doing. And so even if you learn it wrong, you end up creating like your own version of it. And so then that's actually maybe even better, in the long run, but sometimes you can do things the wrong way. And it's just like, oh, wow, like you're never going to be able to play the lick right, because you're just.
In that regard, do you think that YouTube is bad for people developing their individual techniques because they are literally learning from a mirror?
I think it's great in that I think what is amazing about it is to see someone do something, puts it in your mind that it's possible. And so if you're like, oh, wow, like, okay, if I just work on it, I can do that. I think maybe the hard thing is that there's no discernment of what's good or what's bad information. It's just, and if anything, there's too much information. And so it's really hard to sift through and have a discerning eye of like, wow, this is someone who really knows what they're talking about, and someone who doesn't, or whatnot. I actually, the thing about it is I don't really use YouTube too much to learn anything. I find like it not that useful for me. I tend to go to like higher quality sources.
Right.
Which there certainly are on the internet.
Oh yeah. For a while I was using YouTube to like learn the shortcuts and different editing and mixing things in Logic, which I use.
Oh, I do that. Yeah. I do definitely for that kind of stuff.
And also for Final Cut to edit the videos, but but there was just so much crap to filter through. I finally got do you remember lynda.com?
Yeah.
Now it is linkedin.com. They should give me some money for talking about them. I got a LinkedIn Pro or LinkedIn Learning, I think it's called. And that's linkedin.lynda.com, which is, if people don't know, it's like YouTube, but without bullshit. And in organized, online class type format.
Yeah.
It's great. I've saved so much time by committing, an hour to watching and mimicking some, editing move. I've saved myself so much time beating myself up in front of the keyboard.
Yeah, because the YouTube stuff, especially the tutorials about how to use like whatever Logic or Ableton or whatever it is that you use, it's like you have to sift through like 10 minutes with the person just talking, and
I don't care. I don't want to hear them talk. But also, like, you can't necessarily just search for a specific thing. Like, okay, if I want to just do this one very specific thing, how do I do that? You can usually find that on LinkedIn, which is great. Yeah. Do you guys have next summer scheduled now? Did you guys reschedule?
No, we don't have anything really planned until the fall. That's the earliest like we have.
So like
we're still scheduled to play. Yeah, basically, exactly. Like we're supposed to play on September 17th at Riot Fest in Chicago.
Uh-huh.
And then we just announced that we're supposed to play, I forget what it's called. C like in this SEA, See Here Now. It's like something that Ashbury
Jersey
Park.
I saw that.
Yeah. So we're supposed to do that on the 19th. So literally we're at the 18th today. So, we're like basically exactly almost a year from when we're supposed to play those shows. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean that if the climate changes and that more things could be added, but I really don't think so because I think my impression anyway, and I'm not speaking with any authority, but from just what I can tell, I think that promoters for the most part are going to be fairly conservative until they know for sure that we're in the clear, because I don't think the industry could handle, hey, let's put thousands of shows for sale, get people to spend the money and then have to cancel everything again because I don't think there's the cash flow.
No, there's too much risk
to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that it's going to be things that were rescheduled to next year. If they can happen, great. I think it's going to be more just kind of rescheduled things. I don't think you're going to see a lot of now, maybe smaller club size things where they can really limit the capacity in local bands. I think you'll see a lot of that kind of stuff. But
I wouldn't go to a fully packed out festival. I don't even think I would go to a show right now. I don't like going to the grocery store.
Yeah, it's weird. I realize now I've gotten used to it, having to, traverse. I obviously I don't like I try not to go out only when I have to, but when it first happened, I would be sweating inside the supermarket.
Yeah.
Freaking out, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? Yeah, it's literally the strangest thing.
What's the smoke situation down there right now?
It was really bad last week. This week is 100% better. The sky is actually fairly blue.
It's only
it was
smoggy
bad. It was
again.
really bad. Yeah, it was really bad in California. Last week, really bad.
I have a lot of friends.
Never seen anything like that either. It was wow.
I have a lot of friends in Portland and Seattle, and they're still in it.
Pandemic, fires. It's what else could happen, right?
Beast with 7 heads. I don't know.
I know. I saw in Michigan they have some crazy mosquitoes. I know that they're people. You got to stay in because of mosquitoes now too.
It's starting to get a little fishy. I think I don't know here. I don't know when the sea's going to start boiling, but perhaps none of us will be surprised.
Yeah, I know,
we're
right?
well tempered at this point. Jeez. Well, yeah, I hope that we haven't talked about it yet right here, but we have a video. We won't talk about the song specifically, but we have a very cool and probably unexpected, although maybe people won't find it to be so unexpected after the conversation we've had here, but we have a video that's, I don't know. We're just waiting for the singer to commit his part.
Okay.
It really seemed like it came together really pretty quickly. The whole thing came together.
Yeah.
Instrumentally, in just a couple of weeks, which is the fastest one of these videos has ever come together. I have some that I've been building for 4 months, with no exaggeration.
I know, Jack was messaging me. He's dude, did you do your video? And I'm dude, I had to finish. I had to do the Michelangelo one. And so I was and I'm, I was dude, I said, I have that one at the end of the week. Yeah. Don't just give me a couple of days. Cause he's did you turn the video? You turn the video in. He's so pumped, man. He's so fucking pumped.
Yeah, we're just, and yeah, so it's going to be great. I've heard, all of it together, and I suppose you have as well.
I have, except the vocals. I haven't heard them.
Right. Well, yeah, and I haven't. Yeah. No one has.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah.
When that comes together, it's going to be pretty cool. What I didn't realize, and this will maybe be a giveaway, is that band was supposed to tour this year, and ironically, their tour was called Lightning Riders.
Yeah.
How fucking weird is that? Because, and I don't want to, I'm not going to give too many hints, but that song comes off Ride the Lightning.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty big hint there, though.
That's a big hint. Hopefully, and this will come out next week. Hopefully, you know what I'm going to do? As soon as we hang up, I'm gonna bust his balls a little bit.
Be you got to get that track.
Hey man, what's up? Come on,
we need
man.
that vocal.
Come on, man. Oh, the other thing is, I hadn't asked you about it, but I'm gonna I'm hoping that I can include a link for people to donate money to a fire relief
Yeah,
organization.
that'd be a great idea. Yeah, for sure.
And try and use the platform for some good. I think
Yeah.
people could use it right about now. Yeah. So I'm really excited about that, and you crushed it. It sounds great.
Yeah, it was
Um,
totally fun. I mean, like it, I had to put in a couple days of like, where I had it set, learn the song, and then like, okay, because I knew I had to, basically do it live. And
yeah.
so I was like, okay, I'm going to actually practice this a couple days, just so I can just have more fun and just play and not be like, oh, I mean, but still, it's so funny because you sit there and you play, you're like, I got this. Then as soon as you turn the camera on, you're like, oh, I just messed up.
Yeah. Well, because you're so much more casual and cavalier about things when you're not under, the microscope, right? And if you
Yeah,
know that
yeah.
people are going to see it, then you're like, oh, I flubbed that one little note. But I've gotten very comfortable and relaxed about that. Like my personal performances on all these things, people probably watch and go, God, this guy fucking sucks. But
Uh-huh.
fuck you. Let's let's see you learn the song in a day and and nail it all the way through on your first try. Usually I do my first take. That's the other thing. But I don't hold other people to that. When it was me and someone on a couch, that's how we did it. We practiced, and then you hit record and it was the first take all the way through.
Yeah. Which that's cool.
It's no, but it's like it's a little bit of a high wire act. It's fun.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's crazy because even with Pumpkins, we've done so much. I've done so much TV
Yeah.
shows with them, and that's like you sound check. It's just like great, and then as soon as like it's real, like you're like, oh my god, like it's that's the most nerve wracking
Yeah.
thing is playing on whatever, like one of those late night TV shows where it's like it's live.
I've only done that a couple times, but it was like it was I think the most surprising and nerve-wracking thing about it was that it was a much smaller space than it seems like on TV.
Totally right. You're like really crammed. I know, like
And in that like tight intimacy of you're 10 feet away from the audience sometimes, and it's that's a little bit of a nerve wracker.
Yeah, it is.
It's harder to play for 10 people than it is to play for 10,000.
Yeah, and just it's it's just such an artificial environment.
Right. It's hard to be
There's no
excited.
energy, there's no vibe, and it's really the hardest thing.
You can see all 10 people's engagement, like person number 9 just yawned. Do they not like me?
Yeah. But the Couch Riffs thing was, that was just as nerve wracking for me.
I love that. That makes
Yeah.
me happy.
But I'm excited for that to come out. That was a lot of fun. So
Yeah,
hit me up any other
hopefully.
time you need someone else to, you need
Oh, I
someone else
will.
to do it.
I will.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got when we're done, I'll tell you about some things that I'm working on it's fucking nuts. But
Yeah, because with that particular track, although I really do like it, and I've always liked that whole album. Jack is the one who
right.
hit me up about it, and so I was like, dude, because I think he was nervous to maybe do it on his own, and so he's like, would you do it? I'm like, yeah, of course, whatever you want, you choose, like So he was like, okay, I really want to do this. I'm
Well,
like,
he
okay,
really
great,
gets a
let's do it.
chance to shine on that song.
I told him, I said, you know what? Someone's going to be worried. Someone out there is going to be worried about their job once they know you're out there on the scene. I said, someone better worry about, their job out there.
Well, dude, stick around for a minute.
Okay, cool.
Thanks so much for giving so much time to the podcast.
Yeah, no worries.
And,
No worries. Yeah. These are
ex-
COVID links.
yeah, excited to hear the record. It comes the 27th of November, is that right?
Yeah, but there's going to be, I mean, at least 4 or 5 more singles coming out before the album drops. And I think
Great.
even maybe as early as next week. But but I'm not exact. I got an email months ago with all like the dates, and it's just like, yeah, great. I mean, like it's this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there videos for all the songs?
Yes and no. There are there we just if today was just there's an animated short movie for about 5 or 6 songs.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, that's coming out. Yeah, that's going to be released over time. Yeah, it's really cool. Really cool.
Oh, great.
Because at the time we're like, oh, the band, we're not obviously together. And so we had to think of like, well, how can we make videos? And so there's like, oh, why don't we do like this kind of animation thing? And so, yeah, it came out. Yeah, it's great.
Nice. Well, I'm looking forward to that. And looking forward to getting the opportunity to see you and the band play next year, this time over here.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to turn this recorder off. Thank you again.